Good morning. This is the time and place for zoning cases hearing for May 8th, 2013. My name is Bradley Collin. I will be conducting the hearing as a hearing officer today. We have 2 cases scheduled, and the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels directly behind me. If you wish to speak and haven't already done so, please fill out one of the green speaker cards located at the counter by the door. I'd like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the Planning Hearing Officer hearing are recorded as part of the public record. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. The first request is a conditional use permit located 800 North Central. The conditional use permit is an application to allow the continued on-site sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages at an existing full-service hotel known as the Embassy Suites, located at 800 North Central within the downtown specific plan in the Gateway District Zone. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if 4 of the required findings are present. They are, first, that the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. Second, that the use and associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or the environment. Third, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And fourth, that adequate public and private facilities such as utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, and traffic circulation measures are or will be provided for the proposed use. In addition, every discretionary decision made related to the sale, serving, or consumption of alcoholic beverages is also to show that they are following 5 criteria which are necessary. 5 criteria are as such. First, that where an existing or proposed on-site use is located in a census tract with more than the recommended maximum concentration of on-site uses, or that where an existing or proposed off-site use is located in a census tract with more than recommended maximum concentration of off-site uses, both as recommended by the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, such use does not or will not tend to intensify or otherwise contribute to the adverse impacts on the surrounding area caused by such overconcentration. Second, that where the existing or proposed use is located in a crime reporting district with a crime rate which exceeds 20% of the city average for Part 1 crimes as reported by the Glendale Police Department, such use does not or will not tend to encourage or intensify crime within the district. Third, that the existing or proposed use does not or will not adversely impact any church, public or private school or college, daycare facility, public park, library, hospital, or residential use with the surrounding area, within the surrounding area. Fourth, the adequate parking and loading facilities are or will be provided for the existing proposed use, or other reasonable alternatives satisfy the transportation and parking needs of the existing or proposed use. And finally, that notwithstanding consideration of the criteria in subsections 1 through 4 above, the existing or proposed uses does or will serve a public necessity or public convenience purpose for the area. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, the hearing officer can either approve, impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. The hearing will proceed as follows. The case planner will give a brief overview of the case, give analysis, make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. And lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make any closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers, and that will be for a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed at that point, and either a decision will be rendered at the hearing or the case will be taken under submission. I'd like to ask our case planner to give us a brief description.
Thank you, Hearing Officer Collin. The property is located on the northeast corner of Burchett Street and North Central Avenue. The site contains an approximately 265,000 square foot, 12-story full-service hotel with 3 levels of underground parking, a complimentary cooked-to-order breakfast and complimentary evening reception, which includes a full line of alcoholic beverages and non-alcoholic beverages, are provided in the breakfast/bar lounge restaurant area. The dedicated bar lounge on the first floor provides a full line of alcoholic beverages. Each of the 272 hotel rooms has controlled access mini bars for on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages. Portable bars are provided within boardrooms and function area rooms. The hours of operation are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Staff has received comments by the police department that describe the number of businesses that sell alcohol and the number of crimes. However, they did not submit any objections to this request, and staff did not receive any other comments. Staff believes that the findings, which can be found in the staff report for the conditional use permit, can be made and recommend that the request be granted. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. No questions, staff. I have one speaker card. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. The first speaker card I have is for Mr. Benson Lee. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Collin. My name is Benson Lee, and from the Embassy Suites in Glendale at 800 North Central, and I am the Regional Director of Hotel Operations for the management company and applicant. I'd like to speak on the 4 initial points regarding our conditional use permit request. The first point, how will the proposed use be consistent with various elements and objectives of the general plan? The Embassy Suites Hotel is a newly built hotel that has been in operation 5 years ago, and we have successfully operated and managed the hotel in a professional manner, and we will continue to do so. The hotel typically provides service and support to the community and the residents of the city of Glendale, both for business and leisure and tourists and visitors throughout the area. Hotels also provide typically food and beverage and alcohol services to guests at the hotel and visitors. We will continue to do that in a conscientious manner, and we always will be sensitive to the surrounding community and businesses and residents. And we will also operate the hotel in professional guidelines and in conjunction with ABC requirements. Second item is why will the proposed use of its associated structure and facilities not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare or the environment? The hotel will not be. We, again, as I mentioned, we are a support business and provide a service to the community. And the hotel is surrounded by mixed use of both commercial and residential. We are positioned in a location that is the hotel is all the food and beverage is self-contained within the hotel. We do not advertise outside of the hotel for any food and beverage or alcohol sales outside the hotel. It's all within the hotel and primarily for our guests and meetings and meeting attendees. Third item, why will the proposed use of facilities not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent use or impede the normal development of surrounding property? Again, food and beverage is a typical service offering in all hotels. Again, we are a luxury brand hotel, upscale. We do conscientiously operate, our hotel and food and beverage service professionally. It is within the downtown specific plan. And again, our location is on Central Avenue, and our main entrance is through Burchett in a cul-de-sac, so there will be no impact, additional traffic, backing up on Central whatsoever. We do have a driveway and doorman, bellman that facilitate parking. We do have an underground garage, 360 parking spots. There is also an adjacent public garage, if need be, which we don't always use, but it's also there if need be. And again, we will continue to operate the hotel and the food and beverage service in a professional manner. Explain how adequate public and private facilities use such as utilities, landscape, parking space, and traffic circulation measures will be provided for the proposed use. Again, I mentioned some of those items, Mr. Collin. Our location is on the corner of Central and Burchett, and our main entrance is off the side street, not on Central. And, everything is contained within the hotel, both restaurant and breakfast areas, all within the lobby, and not technically visible from the outside public. And we do not advertise outside for alcoholic sales.
Okay. Thank you. I had a couple questions.
Sure.
The alcohol sales, I was looking at the application and the staff report. It mentions that there's portable carts. Are those for special events, or?
We do have 8,000 square foot of meeting space for meetings as well as banquets and dinner events and weddings and so forth. So we do set up portable bars, when those meetings are booked. We're staffed accordingly, and all of our food and beverage servers, alcohol servers, are tip certified, trained, as well as management. But those are only during need to have functions. It's not on a regular basis.
And is there any outdoor dining areas or anything?
There is a small outdoor patio outside of our breakfast area, but there is a kind of a dividing wall that it's not exposed to the public view.
Okay. And then my last question is, I assume you've read through the staff report and the draft conditions and findings. Do you agree with the conditions of approval as recommended by staff?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Collins.
I'm going to close the public hearing for this case. Based on the findings recommended by staff, facts and information presented at the hearing, and from the other departments that we received comments from, I'm going to approve the subject conditional use permit, subject to the findings and conditions as outlined in the staff report. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing, be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date of when the letter goes out, which will probably be in the next couple days. Under the appeals provision, Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from Building and Safety Section, Permit Service Center, located on the same floor of this building. Thank you very much. Okay. The next case we have is for a variance located at 4201 Pennsylvania Avenue. The project description is an application for a standards variance to build a 30-unit townhouse-style housing project with at-grade parking where subterranean or semi-subterranean parking would be required to allow reduced interior street-side setbacks and to exceed the allowable floor area ratio located at 4201 Pennsylvania Avenue in the R2250 zone. We also have an application for the same address for a parking reduction permit to provide parking on adjacent street rather than on the property. I'll go through the required findings for a variance. There are 4 findings that are required to be made for a variance. The first one is the strict application of provisions of any such ordinance will result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. Second, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not generally apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. Third, the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And fourth, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. There are 3 findings required for the parking reduction permit. First, the parking need for the land use needs to be shown is not as great for similar land uses, or the parking requirement for the land use established in the zoning code is greater than what will be needed for the land use. Second, the intent of the parking regulations in compliance with other applicable provisions of this chapter is met. And third, sufficient parking would be provided to serve the use intended and potential future uses of the subject parcel. Is everybody in the audience provided speaker cards for those that are interested in speaking? Okay. At this point, I'm going to go to our case planner to give us a brief overview.
Thank you. The proposed project is a 30-unit condominium project separated into a series of 9 buildings across the site. The project is bounded by Pennsylvania on the east, the freeway on-ramp on the south, multifamily and I think 1 or 2 single-family project properties to the north, and single-family properties to the west. An unimproved section of Encinal Avenue, a public street right-of-way, crosses the site. The southerly portion of this was vacated in the past, and the remainder of the street and a portion of the private property will be improved as a street to provide access to the site. It'll function as a driveway serving the property. The buildings on the property are in 4 different types. There are 3-unit buildings. 3-unit buildings, a 4-unit building, and a 5-unit building, and they're clustered in as shown on the site plan. The buildings along the central and easterly portion of the site are only 5 feet from the property line, and this does not meet the code and is one of the subjects of one of the variants for setback on the south side of the property. The building most westerly on the site does not meet the street side setback for the property line to the north, adjacent to the Encinal right-of-way. And there is also a variance for not providing subterranean parking, and then the parking reduction request for providing off-site parking. All the units are 3 bedrooms with 2.5 baths plus a den. The den and a half bath is on the ground floor, and then the rest of along with the garage. The units range in size from 1,650 to 1,740 square feet. All the buildings are 3 stories tall, ranging in height from 32 to 34 feet. Because the property is over 90 feet wide, buildings are allowed to be up to 3 stories and 36 feet. It's important to note that the design appears to conflict with elements of the comprehensive design guidelines for multifamily development that the city adopted in 2011. For example, the building appears to use surface detailing and in the form of score lines and color differentiation in order to add visual interest rather than using distinctive massing to express scale and proportionality. The design details of the project will be the subject of review during the design review process, and project revisions may be necessary to achieve compatibility. The applicant proposes a variance from the requirement to provide subterranean or semi-subterranean parking when there are more than 4 dwellings on the lot. There is a variance requirement to allow a 5-foot interior setback along the southerly property line at all 3 floors of the building, rather than have the graduated setbacks required by code. There's a variance to exceed the allowed floor area ratio of 0.85, and they would like to go to an FAR of 0.9. And then again, they're asking for the parking reduction permit to provide some of the parking off-site adjacent to the property. A final mitigated negative declaration was approved for the project by the Design Review Board on September 18th, 2003 for a 23-unit townhouse-style project. Staff prepared an addendum to that mitigated negative declaration that addresses the new configuration of the site, and no new mitigation measures are proposed. The previous approvals for the previous project have all expired. The site is unimproved, and there is some slope across the site, both from west to east, going downhill from west to east and going downhill from north to south. The highest portion of the site is at the northwest corner, over here nearest the westerly property line, and the lowest portion of the site is down here at the southeast corner near the freeway on-ramp. The property is approximately 1.63 acres in area, with a total length across the site of about 750 feet and a street front length of 99.64 feet. There have been a number of comments provided by the city departments. Those are all in front of you. There is an extensive set of conditions of approval proposed as a result of those comments. One of the two key points are that traffic engineering has required that there be no left turns in or out of the site. And as a way to prevent left turns from occurring, they're going to require that the applicant construct a raised median in Pennsylvania, so that cars will only be able to make a right turn in and out of the site. The median will extend roughly, wish I had a pointer, It might actually be easier on the aerial photo. The median will roughly be from here to here. It won't extend up to Altura, and it won't extend up in front of this multifamily to the north of the site. It'll just be in front, basically, of this project itself. So anyone wanting to enter the site will have to go north on Altura, make a left on Altura, or make a U-turn someplace north of the site, and then come back to the south. Or, and to exit the site, they'll only be able to make a right turn out of the project site. As a condition of approval, the Public Works Department has required that the developer maintain all of the newly improved portion of Encinal. So although it'll be a portion of it will be a public street, it will be maintained by the project, by the homeowners association in effect. And so there'll be no city cost incurred in the maintenance of the street. The applicant's also been required to provide access easements for both public and private vehicles so that access can occur across the site, because portion of the street or the driveway is private property. And they're also going to be indemnifying the city from any liability based on that access. The entire southerly portion of the curb face of the driveway and / street that provides access will be painted red, and there will be no parking allowed on the south side of the driveway. And there will be no parking allowed on this portion of the driveway either, because this will all function as a fire lane, and the westerly intersection here of these two driveways will provide the required fire department turnaround for the site. There will be no common trash enclosure. Each of the homeowners will be required to put their trash cans out at the curb along this new portion of Encinal and then return them to their garages afterwards. As background, it's important to note that this was a city-owned property for many years, and it was zoned special recreation for future development as a park. The city entered into an agreement with the property owner in approximately 2000 to exchange this piece of land with a larger hillside property on Deer Pass Road in order to preserve the hillside open space. Development of the hillside was limited as a result of that agreement to 2 homes, and this property was rezoned to multifamily R2250 to enable multifamily residential development. The owner pursued a project on the site and obtained all necessary approvals, but again, those approvals have expired because the developer was unable to complete his plans in a timely manner. With respect to the request to provide at-grade rather than subterranean parking, the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The site is an irregularly shaped, relatively narrow strip of land that abuts a freeway right-of-way to the south. Only the southerly half of the site can be developed, as the northerly portion is a street right-of-way that will be improved. There's a significant slope across the property from north to south, necessitating either extensive grading or significant import of fill to make the garages subterranean. The 2-car garages for each unit result in a design that is more desirable for for-sale units rather than having a large subterranean parking area. A usable amount of habitable space is located on the ground floor of each of the units, which meets the intent of the code to provide ground-level habitable space in lieu of subterranean parking. And it's worth noting that requiring subterranean parking would greatly increase the cost of construction, reducing the viability of the project, increasing the chance the lot will remain undeveloped. With respect to the request to have reduced interior setbacks, the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The purpose of the setback standards is to ensure that adequate light and ventilation are provided to each residence on the property and to neighboring residences. The project is unique in that the south side of the property abuts the freeway on-ramp and the north side abuts the driveway running through the site. Substantial light and ventilation will be available on both sides of the project. There is a 1-story single-family house located on the west side of the site. This dwelling is approximately 5 feet from the property line shared with the project. The first 2 floors of the proposed project meet the required minimum and average interior setbacks from this property line. The 3rd floor along this property line meets the minimum setback of 11 feet, but has a 13-foot, 7-inch setback average where 14 is required. This small deviation from the standard of 5 inches will not affect the ability of significant amounts of light and ventilation to be available to both the existing and the new dwellings. Attempting to move the 3rd floor of the building back to meet the average would increase the cost of construction, reduce the viability of the project, and increase the chance the lot will remain undeveloped. With respect to the request to exceed the allowable floor area ratio of 0.85 with a floor area ratio of 0.90, the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The project meets the intent of the code in part by proposing a site with 9 buildings rather than 1. In addition, the portion of Encinal Avenue adjacent to the site will be closed to through traffic and is likely only to be used by the project residents and guests. If the area of this portion of Encinal, approximately 16,500 square feet, is added to the project area, the private property portion of the project would have an FAR of 0.73. Since the street will, in effect, be part of the project and only used by project residents, the project will effectively meet the required FAR. With respect to the request to provide at-grade rather than subterranean parking, to provide reduced interior and street side setbacks, and to exceed the allowed floor area ratio, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not generally apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. The property is oddly shaped, fronted by 2 streets, and bounded by the freeway on-ramp to the south. The property also has a significant slope. Most other properties in the area have a standard shape and size and are not burdened by such significant change in topography. The size and shape of the property makes it difficult to provide subterranean parking, to meet the setbacks, and to meet the floor area ratio with a design that is commercially viable. The project attempts to take advantage of the narrow shape by using 9 separate buildings rather than one massive structure. The project is also burdened with the need to improve Encinal as a public street, despite the fact that only the residents of the proposed project are likely to ever want or need to use it. With respect to the request to provide at-grade rather than subterranean parking, to provide reduced interior and street side setbacks, and to exceed the allowed floor area ratio, granting the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the zone or the neighborhood in which it is located. The townhouse-style buildings are more compatible with the neighborhood than a more monolithic structure employing subterranean or semi-subterranean parking. The project will improve a vacant, weedy site that blights the area and will provide needed for-sale housing. The deviations requested affect the economics of the project and the aesthetics of the buildings, but they are not so great as to create impacts materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the zone or the neighborhood. With respect to the request to provide at-grade rather than subterranean parking, to exceed the allowed floor area ratio of 0.85 with a floor area ratio of 0.9, and to have reduced interior setbacks, granting the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. The site is an irregularly shaped, relatively narrow strip of land. Only the southerly half of the site can be developed, as the northerly half is a street right-of-way. There's a significant slope across the property. Since the portion of Encinal Avenue adjacent to the site will function as part of the project, it's reasonable to include the property area in the FAR calculation. The odd shape and topography, plus the need to retain a portion of Encinal Avenue as a public street, all combine to make it difficult to meet the required minimum and average setbacks. As noted above, the project meets the intent of the setback standards since there is no development to the south other than the freeway. The project will be separated from the development to the north by the Encinal right-of-way, and the deviation from the average setback at the third floor on the west side of the property is minimal. Regarding the parking reduction permit, the parking need for the land use is not as great as for similar land uses, or the parking requirement for the land use established in the zoning code is greater than what will be needed by the land use. A total of 83 parking spaces, including 8 guest parking spaces, are required for the project. The development will provide a total of 85 spaces, exceeding the code requirement. 60 of the spaces will be located in the 2-car garages located under each unit, and 6 guest parking spaces are located out near Pennsylvania Avenue on the private property. The other 25 spaces, will be provided on the improved portion of Encinal Avenue adjacent to the site. This portion of Encinal will be closed to through traffic and is likely only to be used by the project residents and guests. In effect, the project will provide sufficient parking to meet the code requirement. I didn't mention this earlier, but I should point out, as a condition of approval, there will be a gate across Encinal Avenue at the westerly side of the property. The gate will be only available for use by emergency vehicles, fire trucks and police vehicles. The project residents will not be able to exit the gate, and they won't be able to enter the property through the gate. Neither will existing residents be able to go through the gate to get to Pennsylvania or pass through the site. The intent of the parking regulations, in compliance with all other applicable provisions of this chapter, is met. Sufficient parking to fulfill code requirements will be provided by the project. Encinal Avenue will be closed to through traffic and is likely only to be used by the project residents and guests, so the parking will function as part of the project. This meets the intent of the parking ordinance. Sufficient parking will be provided to serve the intended use and the potential future uses of the subject parcel. A total of 83 spaces are required and 85 will be provided. The parking will be located adjacent to the site and will, for all practical purposes, appear to be part of the project and will function as part of the project. Based on this, staff believes that all the findings can be made in support of the variances and for the parking reduction permit, and we recommend approval, and I'd be ready to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton.
Oh, I should point out, there is a new set of conditions of approval revised just this morning in consultation with Glendale Water and Power Water, Glendale Water and Power Electric, and Public Works Engineering. I've made copies available to the public and to the applicant. The The primary change is that the conditions no longer refer to a public street or a private street on the property. It refers to all the access as driveways. So, and then, what else is the most substantive change? From your copy, there's condition 30 has been added to require that the applicant enter into a covenant and agreement with the city to release and hold the city harmless from any liability and to indemnify the city for any claims. I don't think that there are any other substantive changes that need to be noted. And at least preliminarily, I haven't had a chance to go over this version with the applicant, but at least preliminarily, they've agreed, I think, to all these conditions. But you'll have to confirm that with the applicant.
That's fine. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to open the public hearing. Since we have a lot of people that are wishing to speak, if anyone that happens to come before you has said something that you're wishing to say, in an effort to move the meeting along, you can either come up and say, the comments that were made previously that you're in agreement with, or something to that effect. Okay, the first speaker that I have is Eric Everhart. Please state your name and address for the record, and being the applicant, you have 15 minutes to do your presentation. Everybody else will have 3 minutes. We'll go from there.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Everhart. I'm Vice President of Development with the Olson Company. I see some faces in the audience that are familiar to me, but I'd like to ask permission to approach the paneled wall over there just to make some clarifications on some items that I think are in the hearts and minds of the folks that live in the neighborhood.
That's fine.
Could I borrow that pointer? I didn't bring my razor. Thank you. Can everybody see me okay?
Can't see a portion of that because of the flag.
We could slide the board over a little too.
I want to use the. Oh, you can slide the board? Perfect. Better? Okay. Has my 15 minutes started yet? Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for being here. I really do appreciate it. Just a couple points of clarification is that the property that's owned by the Ganges is this property down here. This site here that's along the top here, that's referred to as non-vacated incidental, which is basically a paper street. It could never be built essentially because it would never meet the conditions of what the width of the street would be. So you have a problem. So basically what we've done is we've incorporated within the development and worked with the city to do so that it's all one development. So when there's discussion in regards to parking and whether it's off-site parking or not, the off-site parking that they're referring to is actually this. It's within the project. So we're not asking that any parking be outside here. Actually, we exceed the park. When you include the whole thing, we actually exceed what the requirement would be for parking. So we've got parking traditionally in the garages here, 2 cars side by side, and then we've got guest parking, 25 spaces. So that exceeds the parking requirement. A couple other things that I just wanted to touch on. One of the things that I heard very strongly when we had our community meeting was the fact that you did not want anyone to be able to get through this way. And we've pushed very hard to achieve that. Actually, we wanted a solid wall to go across here. But that wasn't to be, even though fire does have their T turnaround here, which works perfectly for them. So they'll come in, do this. This will be a crash gate. It'll have a Knox box on it. They're not going to use that unless they couldn't for some reason get into here. Okay, so this will maintain your area of privacy here. Nobody's going in or out there, and there's no pedestrian gate. Another issue is drainage. There's been a problem with drainage in this area here. We've got some really talented people on our team, civil engineers that have looked at this site. As you can tell by the site, there's a huge slope topography to the site. Major problem. So what we've done is we've designed it in such a way so that it'll essentially be flat, it'll level out, and we've taken care of this problem here. So basically, the flooding that occurs here, it'll drain this way, drain through here, and out. This was something, we call it the hot dog median. Okay, it requires us to go in and out here. Basically, what is here right now is that we were going to do an island, and it ended up that they didn't want us to do the island. They wanted to do a median across here. So we're going to do a raised median, and the raised median, the dimensions of that raised median, it's a curb, 4 foot wide, and I think it's about 60 foot long, and it runs along the front here. Okay? It doesn't prohibit, like Jeff said, it doesn't prohibit turning in here, but it does require these folks to go right in, right out. Okay? Massing. One of the things that we didn't want to do is have some huge, humongous building or some sort of major eyesore that would not look well and would not sell, essentially. So we developed a very contemporary plan for that, and I'll show you what we have. We actually have a perspective that I'll show you in just a minute, but designed to to fit this unique area, and we're really excited about it. Homes will probably sell for over $500,000. But again, our whole idea is we wanted to be good neighbors, and so we wanted to create something that works. The magic that why we're asking for the variances and that we push this way is because we're pushing away from here as much as we possibly can. So that there's that area that just pushes away from here, and you have lots of area between the two. So we're bringing it up close to the freeway, but we figure that that's the best way to do it, working privacy concerns. Now, I've got some other things that I'd like to go over with you. I'll try not to be too... This is just a quick perspective of what it's going to look like. I can't do that? Okay. I don't know if that's going to show.
Here you go.
All right, thank you.
You talk, I'll...
Perfect. Let me grab my notepad.
I want it.
I don't normally talk this fast, but I've got 15 minutes to do my spiel. So you have your entrance here coming in. It's going to be very attractive, well landscaped. There's going to be a low wall here and a wall along here. There'll be 6-foot wall along the entire property. So there's that privacy that everybody wanted, and we wanted too. What we've tried to do is we've tried to design a new development that brings life and vitality to the site while respecting the neighborhood. And in order to do that, we work collaboratively with staff across all the departments to come up with what we believe is an innovative solution that meets the spirit.
You
Eric,
need to
you gotta
speak
use
into
the
the
mic.
microphone. You can turn it
sorry.
around if you want to face the
Okay,
audience.
so I got to look this way and
Well,
talk.
you can turn the mic around, and if you want to face that way, but
There you go.
yeah.
Is that okay? Sorry, I'm the rookie of the year, I guess. That meets the spirit of the ordinance, but
Still gotta be into the mic.
Also works well for this particular site because, again, there's a reason why it's been a problem for 50 plus years. Is that no viable solution has been worked out. We've been able to, based on some very talented people, not me, but some very talented group of consultants, talented people at the city, we've been able to work collaboratively to come up with a great idea. And that's why we're asking for these variances today. In regards to the zoning standards, we meet the maximum lot coverage, we meet the maximum landscaped area, we meet the maximum open space, private open space area, and the maximum common area open space. We meet and exceed the parking for a project of this size.
Mr. Everhart.
Just to speak in regards to the land itself, it's probably, I kind of describe it as the land that time forgot.
Mr.
And-
Everhart? I'm sorry, I'm over here.
Okay.
I think they can hear you.
All right, we'll work it. I kind of describe this as the land that time forgot. It's best termed as long-term blight, and essentially it's a public hazard because of the weeds and everything that can grow. I'm sure that the fire department would love to see, and they've said they'd love to see the site developed. The site, again, has been vacant since the construction of the 210 freeway, which was decades ago. The only attraction right now is it attracts vagrants and other trespassers to the property, which would be a concern if I were a neighbor. The site itself is a mix of dirt piles, abandoned construction debris, weeds, scrub, overgrowth, and it's significantly sloped topography I've already spoken about. We talked a little bit about the basically it's a portion of the street that's non-vacated, and the Ganges on the bottom portion. The two put together create an excellent drive aisle, and it creates a community that actually can be developed. Without either, it makes it almost impossible to come up with any solution. We've worked specifically, and I mentioned that it was a whole collaborative process with the various city departments in order to get here. We've agreed to go ahead and build the raised median along the Pennsylvania Avenue there, and we've met the guest parking requirements that they and the T-turn that they requested. We have agreed to go ahead and do the crash gate with a Knox box, so that they've got that, but again, that area will remain locked. We worked with the city engineers so that this street will be maintained by the association HOA. Now, the HOA is their mantra is protect, maintain, and enhance. So they're here forever to make sure that this development looks new and looks great for the next 50 years. Again, within that, we've also agreed that Olson, or the HOA, would maintain the full street, which includes the non-vacated portion of Encinal, and it'll be treated just as a community drive aisle. Again, just touching again on fire department, they've been great to work with. We've met all of their requirements, including the T intersection turnaround. The access driveway itself, which includes the non-vacated portion, has been designed to meet the fire department's requirements and be fully code compliant. We've worked also with integrated waste so that we didn't have those big trash bins that you would normally put along the PL. We've got individual trash cans that fit within the garage. They've been designed to fit within the garage of each unit. And then on trash day, they align them up along the southern portion of the drive aisle, and then at the end of the day, they're required to bring them back and put them back in the garage. We've had numerous developments by the Olson Company where we've done very similar to that. Never have we had an issue. We have a very strong CCNRs that code and requirements that enforce that, so we've never had a problem with that. Again, why the variances? Again, it's if you look at the strict application, this site would never be developed. But can it be developed within the spirit of the municipal code? And that's where we believe that we exceed in that. Granting of this request will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare, and the objectives of the ordinance will still be met by granting the requested variances. Again, parking, the parking reduction permit, when you include the non-vacated portion of Encinal, Olson is in compliance with the intent of the parking regulations and has sufficient parking more than is required. Just to speak very quickly on the subterranean parking, everybody wants a two-car attached garage. People tend to move away from the type of, sometimes it's more of apartment-esque where you have subterranean garages and people walk to a stairwell and then they walk up to the unit. Well, that's not the kind of community that we're trying to create here. We're trying to create a very homeowner-driven community, which makes it attractive to people that want to live here. I would have, with my wife, I would have a safety concern if she had to walk through a subterranean garage in order to get to our home or unit. The site itself, the topography, as Jeff has mentioned, it's a very irregular site, and it's adjacent to a freeway. It has the significant slope. All of these problems I've had to get together with our consultant team in order to try to figure out. There's a discussion on the amountable use of habitable space. We do have that at the ground floor, and we meet the intent of the code. In regards to the reduced setbacks, it makes sense to do that in this fashion because, again, the south side of the property abuts a freeway. We've tried to, on the north side, put a nice big drive aisle between our neighbors. The east side is just abuts a major street, and the west side, we've worked on that, and they're one story there. So we believe that we've met the intent, again, and the spirit of the code. Floor area ratio is another variance that we're requesting, and basically we're at 0.85. The code is 0.90. I mean, we're that close. And so essentially what we have there is that we've designed the interior in such a way that it creates a very vibrant livability space. And so that, we believe, would be more attractive to new homeowners and that would want to buy into this community. Again, the request for the parking reduction permit, we do have the 60 spaces plus 25, so we do adequately meet that. In summary, what we're saying is that, and very respectfully, is that we're bringing a new residential community to the site that brings in new vitality and economic stimulus to the area. It eliminates a 50-plus year of blight and health hazards to the public. This could only happen via a public and private cooperation in bringing the needed solution to this site. The Olson Company has worked with all departments to bring this viable solution, and we believe that this solution that is required for the site is innovative and meets the true spirit of the code. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Olson Company, and I'm available to answer any questions should you have them.
Thank you very much. A quick question for staff, and then we'll go to the rest of the speakers. Mr. Hamilton, if you could, in the updated conditions, verify if there's a condition about the gate off of Maryland, as you described it, as well as something that addresses the pedestrian gate. I couldn't find it. All right, the first speaker that we have is James Vole.
Mr. Chair, I don't think it's a condition because it's actually been incorporated into the project design.
Does that also include the pedestrian gate?
There is no pedestrian gate on the west side of the site.
Okay. Okay.
None proposed, anyway.
Okay.
Good morning.
Please state your name and address. For the
My name is James Vole. I live at 4230 Maryland, which is the corner of Encinal and Maryland. I'm the last house on Maryland. My question was, is there a pedestrian gate going to be on the Encinal, Maryland side?
That's what I had just asked staff, and my understanding is no.
No. Okay. In the past, I lived there now since 1983. In the past, I've seen rock crushers in there. I've seen weed cutters. And all this time has never been irrigated or watered. So I've been eating dust since 3 or 4 times that the lot has been used for disposing of dirt, so on and so on. Will this be taken care of, the dust?
It'll be required as part of construction that they follow certain measures for controlling dust, and most likely depending on the result of this case, if approved, the site will be developed and landscaped, and there'll be requirements that there'll be
Right.
landscaping throughout, so you shouldn't have any dust once a project is complete.
Because as of now, on Altura, on the corner of Altura and Maryland, there's a fire hydrant. They have now a plastic pipe going from the fire hydrant down Maryland through the side of my yard to the project.
Who has this pipe?
I sure didn't put it in there.
Hold on, we'll get there. Hold
It
on,
goes
we'll get
all the
there.
way from the corner of Altura down Maryland, across my driveway, my front yard, and into the project, which has been there now for, I'd say, 3-4 years.
Okay, we'll let the applicant address that once his time comes back.
Okay. That's about all my questions were.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Grant. I can't read it. Michaels? Sorry. How do you spell your last name?
Michals. I'm Grant Michaels. My address is 2710 Piedmont Avenue in Montrose. The concern I have is particularly with the median. If a traffic study was completed, not just at that intersection, but up and down Pennsylvania, the obvious U-turns up and down Pennsylvania and additional turns would disrupt traffic, particularly around an on-ramp to the freeway. Is that going to be required as part of a condition?
The city's, if I could answer.
Go ahead.
The city's Traffic and Transportation Bureau did not require a traffic impact study on this. In part, that was because this project was considered, I think, similar enough to the earlier proposal, and no traffic study was required for that one. So the only issue that traffic was concerned about was making sure that there were no left turns in and out. There was no concern expressed to me up to this point about U-turns north of the site or in the vicinity of the site.
With the new median being proposed, which as I understand was not part of that earlier proposal, I'm concerned about the additional U-turns up and down Pennsylvania.
Just to clarify, there was no median proposed on the earlier proposal, but what was proposed was essentially a median here. This design actually shows sort of a raised, we call it a pork chop, and that was what was proposed in the earlier proposal. That would have also essentially prevented left turns in and out, but Traffic Now and Fire did not want this at the entrance. They wanted to control the turning movement with a median out here. So it was always going to be, the earlier proposal also had physical measures in place to regulate turning movements in and out of the site.
In speaking to the subterranean garages, the goal of the subterranean garages was to reduce the overall height of the building. At this point, you have a 3-story structure that abuts a single-family neighborhood. Part of the design guidelines and a tenet of the North Glendale Community Plan is to provide a meaningful transition between different density zones. So we have the minimum setbacks being met on the western edge of the property, where you would have a 3-story structure overlooking a single-family home. And even in staff reports, the design does not work to reduce the overall mass of that facade. So my concern as far as the subterranean garage and the setbacks is to define a more meaningful setback between not just the apartment buildings or the freeway to the north, but to the differing residential family zone to the west. The other question I have is more of the sound walls along the freeway. The higher the structures are, the more likely sound walls and the height of sound walls will be required. Has anything been said about addressing the sound walls on the freeway, or would that be a city responsibility or a state responsibility?
My understanding is sound walls on the freeway are a state, it's a Caltrans responsibility, and the city, I don't think, has a role to play in that. Not that I'm aware of. Somebody from Traffic and Transportation would have to answer that, and they're not. Unfortunately, they're not here right now. The project is proposing a block wall along the south side of the property, basically running along here. I don't have. Yes, I do. I'm sorry. It's for space reasons. It's very low, but the block wall will be 6 feet tall on the 6 feet tall on the project side and 9 feet tall on the freeway side. So it'll provide a little bit of sound protection for the project itself, but because it's there, the wall will be lower than the buildings, it won't provide really any sound protection to the north. But again, that would not typically be the responsibility of this project to solve the freeway sound problem.
Well, the question of sound walls and building height was one question I had that I didn't see in the project plan. So I know the design elements are likely something that will be discussed at the design review hearing, but the tenet of providing a meaningful transition between residential zones and its typical safety concerns with traffic are my major issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Stuart Biles.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Stuart Biles. I live in the county section of La Crescenta, 4825 Janvier. I used to live on Encinal, 3 houses away from this subject property. We hosted several times in our living room meetings with the neighborhood and applicants to use this property. Let me just say I applaud the developers' ideas to try to reduce or make this a more habitable space, attractive, and trying to blend into the community. However, I cannot believe that he would even think that a 3-story structure would actually, quote, blend in to the community, a community of single-family homes, except for the apartment complex. That the city wants to continue to use Encinal Avenue as a dedicated street or a semi-street, even though they want to have a fence at the west end, which is commendable. There's so much of this is so laughable as to defy logic. I mean, how many years has it been now? 45 years or more? Never once have we ever seen the necessity of a emergency vehicle needing to use this vacant lot to get into any areas that need emergency vehicles. I would hope that Mr. Ganji would, the property owner, would feel the need to really do something for the community by deeding this to a park use, which is what its original intent was all the way back to when the state gave it up to the city. And if they cannot use it as a park use, I think what an even better use would be as a community gardens space, as though those people in the apartments next door would be greatly benefited by that. And I think a sign with Mr. Ganji's name prominently displayed to advertise his beneficence would be part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Sharon Weissman.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Weissman from 5001 Carolyn Way in La Crescenta, and I'm also the representative of the Far North Glendale Homeowners Group in that area. And if this property can't be used as public space, as a park, it is good. First, I'd like to say it is good to have some sort of development there, but we want to make sure it's appropriate. And the FAR should be kept within the zoning rules and standards. We really don't need excessive density in that area. And when they say this is a unique piece of property because it slopes, that again, as Stuart said, boggles the mind, because the entire Crescenta Valley slopes, and every piece of property up there has issues with a change in the topography. That is typical, not unusual. And the parking, I think that variance is not appropriate either, because a public street, just because it's most convenient for this particular new development, there's nothing to stop people from coming in and parking, perhaps from the multifamily further north on Pennsylvania. And 3-bedroom units are likely to have more than 2 cars per unit. And so they might have 3 or 4 vehicles per unit. And so I think that parking should be considered. And the 23-unit development approved 10 years ago seems a lot more suited to this suburban area than 30 units. And from this rendering, I know the developer said they wanted to break it up so it didn't look like a single mass, but from their own rendering, it looks like one big giant single mass. And residents from this new property may want to go north on Foothill. The main market is Vaughn's at the corner of Foothill. I mean, may want to go north on Pennsylvania to Foothill. So if they are developing it with even a 23-unit density, more appropriate than a median would be a traffic light to allow controlled access, rather than mess up mobility around the area with lots of U-turns on both directions. And it's if the people living in this new complex can only turn right, they can only get to the freeway. They can't get to the main business area, which is Foothill Boulevard in that area. And the issue about a traffic study, I haven't done a formal study, of course, but it seems to me in the last 10 years, traffic has increased in our valley. And so I think something that wasn't required 10 years ago needs another look in light of the changes that have happened in the last 10 years. So thank you for your time considering all of these issues.
Thank you. Next we have Nancy Comio. Did I pronounce that close? Como? Sorry.
My name is Nancy Camo, and I live at 3611 3rd Avenue. I represent myself, my husband, a couple of other folks, and the Highway Highlanders, who are residents generally around the Avenues area of North Glendale. All of us use that freeway entrance, the Pennsylvania Avenue freeway entrance and exit a lot, and during traffic times it's very congested there and backs up north of Altura. Sometimes you can't even get through that intersection, and having dozens more cars coming out into that area from this development would really create problems there in terms of traffic. Since the others have said many of the things that I wanted to say, what I would like to point out is this, that there have been an enormous number of variances for this, given to this project. There are design conflicts which have been mentioned, various deviations, and all of these are going to create many practical difficulties and be detrimental to the public welfare. And even more important than that is the setting of precedents for future developments. So we want to be very careful that we don't let this get out of hand, as this one has, because, again, of future developments, and make sure that we adhere to the guidelines, design guidelines that are on the books, and adhere to the visions and principles of the North Glendale Community Plan, which has just recently been approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Julie Kwok.
I'm Julie Kwok, and I live at 3250 Altura Avenue. I'm in a single-family home that's directly, it's almost essentially on the corner of the of Altura and Maryland. The one house, I think, that you were referring to earlier, one residence that's, so I am opposed to. I want to speak specifically to the parking and traffic, but the height of it is a problem as well, just in terms of it doesn't fit, as others have said. But where I live, I'm home during the day. I see people who park on the who live in residents that are already there are walking a block to park down in front of the school a block away already on Altura. So already the street is completely full almost all day. Our guests can't park in the street. A lot of the time they have to park down a block away down by Lincoln Elementary. So parking is already an issue, and also on Pennsylvania, all our neighbors who know, when we come off the freeway, there's cars parked under the freeway all the time. And so even on Pennsylvania, where there's no residents, like under the freeway, already the parking is full. So any extra parking is going to be an issue. And I know that they're saying they have more than the required parking because of the extra 25 that they're including that are on the street. For one, that requires everyone to park exactly immediately, the 25, one right after the other, I assume, and even then it's public. And those people who are parking up near our house are probably going to want to go, may very well want to park on that street. So I'm very concerned about the parking. I'm concerned about the traffic. The U-turns, they had to put in a light there. A little girl, a 15-year-old, got killed crossing the street about 8 years ago or so. And they put in a light at Altura, but there's about 4 lights already in a row there, or 3 lights. Is it 3 or 4 right in a row? And yeah, I agree that another light would be helpful if they're going to be turning left to get up to Foothill. However, there's already quite a few lights. There's a high school 3 blocks away, and a lot of kids driving from there. So I'm just very concerned about the traffic, and the parking are my big concerns. And like they said, the U-turns, both directions actually, up. They're going to come off the freeway. I mean, that's why a traffic study would be very, very good, because coming off the freeway, when you're coming west, you go north on Foothill. A lot of people turn in front of our house down Altura to get further west of Pennsylvania. But they also, if the residents are going to have to go right from their home and down and turn around to get on the freeway to go north, they're going to have to turn around somewhere, I don't know where, south, and then coming off the freeway, they're going to have to turn around either, I don't know if they're going to allow it at Altura or one of the corners between Altura and Foothill. There's no more lights or stop signs. So it's just going to be really, it's not going to be very pretty. And if there's 30 units, and 2 or 3 drivers per unit is my guess. It's going to be a lot of cars. And the last thing is then also guest parking. 1 or 2 events or parties or whatever. I don't know where they're going to park either, because 6 guest parking spots is not very much. So,
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Your residence, do you have a 2-car garage?
We have a 3-car garage. We also can fit up to 5 cars in our driveway. So when friends come, we stack park completely tightly up against our gate. Actually, 4 cars, because otherwise our neighbors who have a flag lot it's a flag lot down to Encinal, so I'm not sure what it belongs to exactly, but to get in our very narrow driveway, it's kind of a double driveway. We ask people to park in our driveway, but many friends, if they don't know, if we haven't told them that, if they park a block away at the school and walk to our house. So,
okay.
And my husband's been living there since '97. I've been living there since 2002.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you
so much.
Next, we have Kevin Copley.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Real quickly, I'll try to hit a few things as quickly as I can. A lot of the topics have already been brought up by some of my neighbors. I live at 4234 Maryland Avenue. which is a two-bedroom house with 4 cars in front of it, because we do have 4 cars. A lot of two-bedroom houses do. A 3-bedroom house could easily have 3, 4, or more. And looking at the parking for the unit, we're looking at a 2-car garage per unit. We have 25 extra spots required on Encinal Avenue, which is not part of the property, I believe. I believe that is still a city street, so I don't believe they do meet their parking variance with the required number of parking spots that they should have for that unit. That is a huge concern. Again, the neighborhoods throughout the area are inundated with cars on every street. Trying to find a parking spot is almost impossible. Real quickly, regarding the medium proposal in front of the property, I would want to look at that to see if that did not impact the 3100 block of Encinal Avenue, which is to the east of Pennsylvania, because then those people could not turn left onto Pennsylvania. In your own analysis, you have talked about the fact that parking would result in difficulties for the general intent of the ordinance, and that's why they're going for the variance. The setbacks are the same. And my question would be, with the 25 spots that they're proposing for parking on Encinal Avenue, how wide is that street? 25 cars would have to fit pretty tight into that street. Is it wide enough to have those cars, the trash cans that they're going to be bringing up, and a fire truck if it were to roll through? And lastly, I would like to ask, looking at Glendale City Code, I do not know if this has changed. I'm looking at Section 30, Part 124, that says that any unit over 1,600 square feet would then require 3 parking spots, not 2. I don't know if that has changed in the last 8 years or so since this was printed, but I believe that they don't meet it under Section 30.124. And that's pretty much all I've got. I would ask that they would study traffic. I really do believe that traffic would be a much bigger burden than anyone realizes. And I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Next we have Jim Kingsley.
Hi, my name's Jim Kingsley. I live at 3333 Encinal Avenue, to the west of the property. We've heard a lot of good input from people today, and most of them have said things that I was thinking of. Primary among things that I'm thinking of is there was vacillation of on the parking on the new piece of Encinal was likely only, it's a public street, people will park there. It's going to become a park and ride for people getting on the freeway. That's my opinion. I also think that an investigation, which wasn't required previously, of the traffic patterns in the area needs to be considered. We have problems that people have said, but in the morning, Encinal turns into a racetrack for Lincoln Elementary School, people dropping people off and getting back to where they want to go. Portions of that street of Encinal and Maryland have a literally 13 feet to get by down near Maryland and in front of my house. If I were to park my truck across the street from my neighbors, there would be very little room to get by, and then this this parking problem that's going to be exacerbated is going to push cars farther into these single-family residence areas where this street is unimproved. If the street was improved, it might be a different story, but it's not. I don't think the city's going to spend the money to go ahead and improve Encinal where we live, so it's just a problem that's going to ask for more trouble in the future. Thanks.
A quick question for you. Your property is west of Maryland?
Yes.
By about how many lots would you say?
6, maybe.
6 lots? Okay. Thank you. Next we have Sharon O'Connor.
Thank you. My name is Sharon O'Connor. I live at 3260 Encinal. My property, 100 feet
to the west side is directly impacted by this project. My property obviously borders this project. The easement for the vehicles in the past, I've been coming to these meetings for 10, 12, 13 years since it was a Ganges project. I've been in the community since 1967, very familiar with the Ganges. I'm glad that they will not be pursuing it on their history. Olson's have a much better reputation. That part's good. This park, a lot of people have said a lot of really good things. Their picture, low impact, no. This is, La Crescenta is, we call ourselves rural urban, but it's very rural up there. A lot of single-family residents. A lot of people have dressed this, have 3 stories is nuts. And it's, I could see it from the Pennsylvania side on Altura. Up front of them is apartments, 2-story. Very shoddy, built as apartments, and they tried to turn them into condos and shoddy work. As I say, I've been in this community for a long time. I know all the construction BS stuff that's happened. Next to them, there are a couple of apartments there. So if there was 3 stories on the Pennsylvania side, that'd be fine. I think as you go in fact, can I use the pointer and address a couple of things?
Yeah, come on back.
So yeah, here, let's see, parking structure. This is Altura up here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Somewhat north.
Apartment building that goes.
Right, so we have a couple of, there's the place that tried to go condo, I guess they kind of did, and then there's another large structure. Okay, so they're not impacting very much. But when you come down here and you have single-family residence, single-family residence, single-family residence, single-family residence, and these towering buildings, it seems that maybe these should maybe start dropping down how they tire, and then you are stepping into and gradually going into the community. But to have a 3-story building here and here, and this is what, a 5-foot setback to the single-family residence?
I believe it's 12 feet.
12 feet, that's more appropriate.
Different distances at different floors.
The
Okay.
setback varies.
Now, the setback to the freeway, I can understand. Who cares if you encroach on the freeway? It's not going to impose on the freeway. If there's some setback to the freeway, I don't even know why the city of Glendale enforces that. It's not like the freeway's going to complain. The building's too close. So, I mean, it might. I hope they're putting in 3-pane windows. Any windows that are facing the freeway, that would be appropriate. Okay, so as long as I'm here pointing, it's going to come up, and I hope everybody addresses this no left turn thing. This was brought up with the Ganges, and I don't know what. I'm having trouble finding a nice word for the person who suggested that there can't be.
I think the goal is trying to keep people from going into the community and trying to force traffic.
So
away.
double the traffic. So you go up and down. So now you have twice the cars. You go down and around, twice the cars. It was suggested that when you come off from heading east to west on the freeway, if you were to make your right turn, it would be too difficult to get in the left lane and come here. There's 2 lanes. I was told to shut up and not talk back by the city council. Both lanes, you can make your right turn. Both lanes, if you're in that lane, you can make the right turn and be in the right lane. You can be in the left turn, coming off left lane on the freeway, and make that right turn. It is quite legal. Then you would be in the left lane and could easily make a left turn into the structure. The light that the other Sharon mentioned here, sure, you can coordinate. You could put in a left turn lane adjacent from the other 2 lanes, add a lane. This is a dirt lot that the city water, CV Water uses, Crescenta Valley Water. You could actually widen, I would think, here if need be, although I believe this is Crescent Valley, not Glendale property. But a lane could be made, a left turn lane here. The light could coordinate without having a complete single. It could coordinate a left turn single on Altura. They can make their left turn at the same time people are making a left turn on Altura. Simple solution, smart, intelligent.
You're
not,
suggesting that not have the median.
oh, absolutely not. You could have some sort of a
left turn
medium.
lane to allow them to go in.
Yeah, and the same thing. Now, making a left turn out of there is going to be more difficult if you have a left turn lane into the building. But at the same token, then if you have everybody turning right, then you have U-turns, you're going to impact the community down below the freeway as well. It's
Okay.
a very good point made. So
I understand.
I have a long list, and I'm going to keep going.
I've only got a certain amount of time, and I've got other people that I need
And-
to hear from as well.
Okay, so I am directly impacted here. Previously, this was supposed to be a 25-foot fence for emergency vehicles. Is it still supposed to be 25
Proposing
feet?
a gate
Access?
for emergency.
A 25-foot access in front of my house,
That only is to
coming
be
off
used
of an
for
18-foot
emergency.
street.
Only to be used for emergency vehicles.
Coming off of an 18-foot street. The widest portion of the street is 18 feet wide. Why do they need a 25-foot access? If they can't get down the street in 18 feet, okay, so if this is not going to impact this neighborhood, by closing this off and needing 25 feet access, you're taking away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spaces from our community.
The 25-foot, the gate has to be the same width as the street.
The street's 18 feet wide in most of the area.
They're
It's 25
improving
feet wide on the project site, so that's why there's a 25-foot
But
wide.
on the street approaching the gate that they would have access to is 18 feet.
Again, the street on the driveway on the project site is 25 feet wide. That's why the gate is 25 feet wide.
Do you need 25 feet on the other
It's
side?
only needed and it's only required for emergency access. It'll be locked all the time. It would, as the applicant pointed out, it would only be opened in the event that for some reason the fire can't get to the site coming off of Pennsylvania.
Okay, my point's still not being...
And the portion of Encinal west of the site is not going to be improved. It's not going to be paved. They're not going to do curb and gutter unless,
How about no parking
as a
signs?
result of the improvement of the project, they somehow damage the stormwater or the water lines under that portion of Encinal. At that point, then they may have to improve Encinal. But assuming that they don't damage the pipes, then they will not have to improve Encinal west of the project, so it'll remain gravel and it'll remain its current width.
How about no parking signs in front of the gate?
On the project side, you can't park
On the west side of the gate?
on the project side of the site. You will not be able to park in front of the gate. Anybody parked west of the gate is currently parking on public right-of-way and should not consider it as private parking.
So there is no
Sharon, can you
street parking west side of the gate, you're saying?
That which is there now.
This is being used for parking in front of we have parking in front of our house. You're saying that I'm not allowed to park in front of my house? I'm not allowed to have guests park in front of my house?
In front of your house is
No,
not-
I've never been ticketed, and my guests have never been ticketed to be parked. My house is here.
That's not changing. It's my understanding.
changing.
There's no change or no effect to that.
If she parks there, will she be?
How will a fire truck come through if we're parking there? There's not going to be 25-foot access anymore.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you for your comments.
So we are going to be impacted losing, and then my neighbor also parks in front of their place. And this isn't actually on the street. The street comes here, and then it,
Understand?
familiar.
All right,
Okay.
Thank you. Next, I have Sherry Stubbs.
I've been coming to these meetings a lot. I have other issues.
I've got to move on. I've got other people, too, that are wanting to speak. I understand your concerns. If you want to leave me something in writing, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I hope I hope these are addressed properly.
My name is Sherry Stubbs. I live at 3200 Fairesta Street, Unit 11, La Crescenta. We're about 5 blocks directly north of the project. As you can see from the other speakers, this project affects the larger community, not just neighbors within 500 feet. And it's just come on our radar, so there hasn't been much time for us to really digest this. It appears that the entire project is to be built almost entirely on the basis of variances. This is very scary. Nothing seems to be conforming to code, or very little. The FAR variance results in higher density. There will also be an increase in traffic. We're talking a minimum of 60 vehicles with 30 units. Pennsylvania is heavily trafficked. It's a conduit to the 2 on-ramps, both east and west 210s. And if they add a median and want U-turns, we're going to have a big problem. There's over 100 units in the complex at the corner of Altura and Pennsylvania. And a lot of traffic comes off of that street onto Pennsylvania to come down to the freeway. It was noted that the Homeowners Association will indemnify the city. The Homeowners Association doesn't have any money. It's brand new. It doesn't have, practically speaking, a Homeowners Association cannot fiscally perform. There would be no resources to pay for any indemnification, litigation, or anything else for several years until there was a reserve buildup. Subterranean parking is safe and is appropriate. The cost can be equalized by other measures, such as reducing the number of units. A traffic study should be done. There are other viable solutions for the property, such as Mr. Biles and Ms. Wiseman mentioned. A park or gardens would be much more appropriate. The owner, Mr. Ganji, if we're going to use blight as an excuse or a reason to allow this building, he's the owner. He should have been maintaining this property all along. But as it was mentioned, I also live in a Ganji property. There was construction defect litigation at the beginning with settlement in favor of the owners. So I'm afraid I'm a little bit leery of anything Ganji has to do. And as I mentioned, the other humongous property on the corner. There are questions of good design and massing in the staff report itself. There are questions of design, height, and compatibility to the single-family homes on the west, with the greatest height of the project being on the west. This project, as it currently appears, will be detrimental to the public welfare, particularly with traffic. The variance issue, I think, should be continued to allow more input and questions to be answered, as the project currently does not meet the 4 requirements for standard variance. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker card I have is for Marie Martin.
Will this go lower?
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Marie Martin. I live at 3320 Encinal. And one of the concerns I think has been addressed, it's that gate for the pedestrian. My vision was that they were going to now start parking on our street. If you've seen our street, I don't know if you gentlemen have, we live on a very tiny street with no sidewalks. It's difficult for 2 cars to pass each other. My kids, who are elementary school kids, go to Lincoln Elementary, which is 1 block up. We have a huge problem in existence right now with traffic and speeding. We have people using our tiny street as a thoroughfare to get from New York to Pennsylvania and Altura. I don't know why they use our street. My husband walks our children to school in the morning, has been nearly clipped by cars in the morning. The additional building, I applaud Olson Company for coming in and trying to develop there. I'm not in agreement that this kind of complex needs to be built where we live. We moved to La Crescenta because of its charm. It's losing that charm because of these multi-units that are coming in. And I don't think that it serves the purpose of the community in existence right now. We have too much traffic. We have too many cars. It's dangerous for my kids to even play out in the street as it is, but we love La Crescenta as it is today, not how it's going to be 10 years from now when we have buildings all over the place with multiple families and multiple cars. So we would like you, as the neighborhood, would like you to consider leaving La Crescenta with the charm that it was built on, the reputation, and why people moved to La Crescenta to begin with. And we hope that we can still keep our street as our street. Thank you.
Quick question for you. I'm sorry, I got a quick question.
Sure.
When you're walking your kids to school, you go east on Encinal, north on Maryland?
We go both ways. We live 1 block directly south of Lincoln Elementary. Streets tend to go from west to east on Encinal up Maryland because they turn to drop their children off.
Okay. And with the gate being up there and the potential owners living in there not being able to come out onto that side or to the west, does that help any?
It does help. If the building does get built, I just want to make sure that that gate is not accessible to the residents that live there, because then they will start parking on our street, and then that just adds to more congestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This time I'd like to ask the applicant to come back up as a rebuttal.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone. The Olson Company always appreciates this process, and we're a company that have built our reputation on quality construction and innovative design. In regards to just a couple of the items that were brought up, in regards to the zoning, the 2250, actually we're building less units than we could actually build on the site. If the Ganji development were to decide to come in, they could build apartments here, and they could do that at right. In regards to parking, we've worked very hard so that we meet and exceed the parking requirement. We've worked very hard to make sure that the individuals to the west were not impacted. We were not required to do, nor was the previous development required to do a traffic study to the east. Again, we're looking to bring a very quality, high-end development to this location. These will be expensive homes, and we have the experience of 25 years on writing CCNRs that are very prohibitive and require the communities to live up to the agreements that they sign when they buy the units from us. With that said, again, we appreciate the dialogue and appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, and one last thing. In regards to the comment on the building height, we are within the level. We're less than the level of required building height for the area, so we're good there too.
Quick question too. Do you happen to know the grade elevation that you'll be at, say, in relationship to the apartment building to the north?
I don't know that
Difference?
exact. I don't know that exact height. Do you recall that, Gerardo? Or
Might be on they don't show much of the grading to them.
I think we have the answer, Jeff.
Your question, I'm Gerardo, the civil for the Olson Company.
A speaker step for you.
No.
When you get a chance, go ahead.
Sure. Your question was the grade difference between the apartment complex to the north and is it
Subject property upon, like, the finished grade.
along Encinal? Most of Encinal we're about 2 feet below the apartment complex. The street finished grade, as we work our way westerly, we're about 4 feet below finished grade. So we're lower than the apartment complex.
By about 4 feet?
Correct. Our
That's-
street finished
that's
grade.
finished grade once you're done with construction and everything else.
And then our building height is, what is it, 36 feet above
From
the
that
finished grade.
-4.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any other questions that you had?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm going to take the case under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing. It will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing today or by submitting any written responses, provided we have their name and address, mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date of the hearing, or on the letter, I'm sorry. Under the appeals provision, Title 30, Title 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from Building and Safety Section, Permit Service Center, located on the same floor of this building. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and all their valuable input, and I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. Thank you very much.